In Genesis 8, verses 21 and 22, we read that after Noah had presented a sacrifice to God after the flood, God promised himself that he would never again judge the world and destroy it with a flood. And I think, by the way, that the implication is in any other manner until the very end of time, in the last judgment, in response to man's sin. Because as a matter of fact, man is sinful. He's never going to stop being sinful. God says, I'm not going to do this again. And he says, as long as heaven and earth endure, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, night and day will not cease. Now, there's a Hebrew poetic device there called merism, where the opposites on continua represent, these and everything in between, all right? And I understand that passage as indicating that God has said that all the various cycles on which life depends are going to be sustained by his providential care from now until God ends heaven and earth themselves in the last judgment. Now that too, I think, is contrary to fears that man-made climate change could bring an end to the various different climate cycles on which we depend and on which other forms of life depend for our thriving. Now, those are a couple of theological foundations. There's much, much more that I could discuss, but time won't permit. You might read my book, Where Garden Meets Wilderness. But now I'd like to go into just a bit of some scientific background for you. And are we ready here? Good, very good. First of all, global warming is real. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. At least it's been real many times in the past, but then so has global cooling. The chart that you see in front of you here comes from the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change from its 2001 assessment report, and it shows us a reconstruction of temperatures over the last 18,000 years, that is, since the last ice age. And of course, if you're a young Earth creationist, you're going to have to do some changing of how you interpret some of the chronologies here to fit it into your paradigm. I think that's an entirely legitimate thing to do. Our paradigms necessarily determine how we're going to interpret data. There are no such things as self-interpreting data. But this, anyway, is how the majority of the climatological community looks at the history of temperatures. You see a period there called the Holocene maximum. During that period, temperatures were much, much warmer than they are today, and it looks as if for the vast majority of ecosystems, that was the healthiest the world has been since the last ice age.